Hello everyone, Charles Watts here. Welcome back to Inside Arsenal. Welcome back for a very special show today. As you can all see, I'm joined by the one and only Martin Keown today. Martin, how are you doing? Thank you very much for joining me.
Charles, thank you for having me.
No problem. First of all, congratulations. This is a big day. Obviously, the launch day of your new book, Martin Keown on the Edge, hits the shops today. So a really busy day for you, I'm sure. Congratulations on that. And thank you very much for joining me on what is a really busy day, I'm sure, to spend a bit of time talking about the book and about the Arsenal.
Yeah, my favourite topic, supporting Arsenal. And of course, playing for them back in the day. Nothing beats playing for Arsenal, that's for sure.
No, and I mean, that comes across in the book, which I've just finished reading. It's a fantastic read. And everyone who's watching this or listening to this on the podcast, I've dropped the link down below in the description where you can click and head over and purchase a copy. It is well worth a read. And like I said, when you sort of go through the book, what really comes across, obviously, is your deep-rooted love for Arsenal that spanned over two separate stages of your career. And I think it was about sort of 25 years all in all, your connection with Arsenal as a player. And yeah, that really comes across, is the love you had for the club. You know, the tough times you felt when you sort of left the club and immediately felt like it was a mistake. So that really does come across. And even now, you still got that love for the Arsenal.
Do you know, I can still remember, when that phone call comes in from Arsenal as a young player, 13, 14 years of age, the phone rings as they did. Everybody went out to it in the hallway in those days, wasn't it? Mobile phones everywhere now. Mm-hmm. My mum came rushing in to say that it's Arsenal on the phone. I can still hear her. Gives me shivers now. And life-changing call. You know, I was kind of like of the opinion, I think I said to my dad at the time, it's about time too. You know, lots of young players in my area were going to clubs, and for whatever reason, that phone call wasn't coming. So I started off on that road to Arsenal, taxi waiting for me outside school, which I made sure was parked a good distance away. Didn't want any tongues wagging about where I was going. And I came into London. It was, the throngs of people at the Paddington station, arriving at a dimly lit Highbury, walking the streets, the sort of mystique of going through the front door at Highbury, never leaves me really. The sort of upstairs, downstairs feel of the club, downstairs for the players, upstairs for the bigwigs. Mm-hmm. And I met that first day, I met Al Fields. Anyone who knows the club, he played in the 30s. So I kind of linked back to then because he was filling me with stories from day one about how to conduct yourself, how to be an Arsenal player. And that journey sort of started in my mind's eye. I can see it now walking through the front door, and never really wanted to leave it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it wasn't easy for you. I mean, you were living in Oxford back then, weren't you? When you signed and you were making that journey up, I think was it your sister you were travelling with in those early days?
That's right. Somebody I think had been a kidnap or something of a young person about my same age. My dad said, "Look, you can go, but your sister's going to have to take you." We didn't want to ask though for Arsenal for expenses, and I was travelling the furthest distance of any other player. It was just on the boundaries of what was allowed. Mm-hmm. So I'd take a train into London and get home every training session about 12 o'clock. A lot of the guys that I was to eventually encounter in the youth team, which was, I do feel for the sort of aficionados, the Arsenal fans, the group of 83, the youth team that I was in was just remarkable. And I know there's Manchester United lay claim to the fantastic story that it is, just looking at that photograph. And they weren't, we didn't have a chance to put Paul Merson into this, who was a schoolboy. And Niall Quinn, of course, signs that season as well and plays a major part in the club's history. 6 of us, full internationals, 8 of us make it into the first team. So I was very proud of that. And you can see Rocastle there, a very young, shy David Rocastle. Mickey Thomas scores, of course, that incredible goal at Anfield. Tony Adams led the club with great distinction. Martin Hayes was top goal scorer for a couple of seasons there. So there's Gus Caesar as well, and I'm playing my part. So they were This was the start of that road. Myself and Tony would have played in the youth team. We met about 14 years of age. That partnership doesn't really get going again, I feel, until sort of 97, 98. in the running to winning that double, where we gain, and I didn't know this, we had 12 clean sheets from 14 games. So, it was starting to click again. Tony had been away, cleaned himself up and come back as the Tony Adams that I kind of knew as a kid, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's a remarkable team, that, isn't it? Like you say, the class of '83. It's what that team went on to achieve throughout their career. The number of appearances in senior football was just remarkable. The trophies that was won between you, it's an incredible. It was an incredible success story. I mean, that sort of reading the book and reading what it was like for you at that time. It was. I mean, the book's called On the Edge, first of all, and just talk to me a little bit about the title, On the Edge, in terms of what that really means, because it does come across when you're reading the book, exactly. But it just, for you, so sum it up what that title means.
Well, I think it was born out of a meeting I had with, because it's a sort of compilation, really, of different writers. So we worked with Alex Kajalski, and he then took the top job at the BBC with weeks to spare on the book. And then Maurice Goran and Lawrence Marks, if you know, they're two great writers, comedy writers, birds of a feather. And my son also, a great wordsmith, he's a journalist. So he was sort of, involved in the book. And then it kind of it took off from there in the early sort of workings of the book. And I wanted to get that comedy in, for people to know there was an intensity about me, but also humor. And On the Edge title came out of a meeting where I was demanding more of the people around me, which was, I'm told, is different when it comes to writing a book. But I wanted my book to be told in the right way. And I think the guys, the editor was saying, we were on the edge there. Why don't we call it On the Edge? And if you go through the book, you'll realize that I was playing my football on the edge. And I lived my life on the edge. Mm-hmm. So it felt really an appropriate title for the book.
Yeah. I mean, that, when you said there how sort of demanding you can be, I think that comes across in the book. And, if you think your way is the right way, you're not going to back down in those situations, whether that be on the pitch, whether that be in contract negotiations and things like that. And that ultimately led to your departure from Arsenal as a youngster. There was a sort of contract negotiation going on. You felt that the club didn't offer you the money that you felt you were worth, given your stature in the game already at that young age. And you ended up taking that decision to move away, to go to Villa, to go to Everton, and before coming back to Arsenal. And you talk about that and how almost immediately when you're at Villa, you're thinking to yourself, have I done the right thing here? And you've had to, the next couple of years, sort of watch on as Tony, like you said, you come through and that team go on and end up winning the title. And I thought that was really interesting how that sort of exit came about and your immediate sort of reaction to it once you'd left the club. Because there's always that talk, isn't there? As soon as you leave Arsenal, you realise what you've left behind. So many players who have left say that. And did you sort of realise that straight away?
100%. But if I take you back a little bit about the, I left really on a point of principle, and I didn't do it lightly. And I look, it affected me most of all. But when I was in digs with maybe Nicky Beaumont, for example, great lad, desperate to be an Arsenal player. That was the dream we all followed. They'd crack a whip of, are you going to be good enough to sign pro every single day? And for me, I was up against central defenders that ever plays the game in Tony Adams, a competition. So I thought I'd climb the mountain. I was in the team. I played 23 games virtually on the bounce. I'm 19 years of age. I don't think it would happen today. Mm-hmm. And then you sit before them, they're telling me what I'm the best young defender in the country a month before, and then suddenly I'm not recognised in the building. I'm sat there, they offer me £50 a week rise. And I thought, well, okay, you're not going to decide my career. You've done it for a lot of players. I bought into this. The rules were, they're tough rules. A lot of people showing the door. I'm taking the exit. You're not going to decide when I go, I'm going, because I think it's ridiculous. Mm-hmm. So therefore I left. I leapt, really. I didn't really look where I was going to. Villa got lucky. They called just at the right time. I was too emotional around that decision. And I ended up making a huge mistake. But based on what I knew at the time, and it was interesting when I sat down to talk to Tony Adams, who was really forthcoming. We sat and met because I had two chats really with Arsene Wenger and Tony Adams. And Tony is actually saying then about my principles that he fully understood, and I stood up to the club. but they kind of got in the way of what I really wanted, which was to stay at Arsenal. That summer, I went on holiday and had Arsenal fans. I was away in Spain coming up to me. Never happened before. Wow, what a fantastic start to your season. You've been one of our best players. And I was like, okay, they don't even know I've signed for another club. All these contracts were put into a vault. It was kind of an illegal approach from Villa. But anyway, in the end, I went through with the move. And yeah, you're right. I was looking over my shoulder then, to get back to where you finished. I was looking over my shoulder at these great U-team players, not thinking every club was furnished with this type of player. But they weren't. These were special players who went on to prove that. You know, we talk about nearly 5,000 games among them, copious amounts of medals, league titles for the football club. And they were starting on that journey of winning trophies. And I was watching from afar, pleased for them, but thinking, you know what, that should be me. It could have been me.
Yeah, that you talked about the sit down you had with Tony in the book. I love that, the transcript of it. I just think it's a really brilliant passage in the book, and the same with the Arsene Wenger one at the end as well. And you're saying there that Tony was talking about the principles, your principles there, and how you sort of stood up for yourself and stood up to George and things like that. I thought that was a really, really great part in the book. But it was George who obviously brought you back in '93, wasn't it? And you said then, as soon as Arsenal came in, even though I think that the money was less than what you were getting at the time, or could have been getting, you were like, I've got to get back there. This is where, you know, I started. It's where I want to be. And you jumped at the chance to come back.
Yeah, 100%. I had a really good relationship with Howard Kendall at Everton. In one of those journeys back from the games, I used to drive him home after matches. He opened up to me and said, look, we go out the cup competitions and you're on the way to Arsenal. Let's not crack open the champagne yet, though, because the wages are not fantastic. So it might not work. But I'd already been approached by Arsenal behind the scenes, so I knew what was on the table. And then I just wanted to get back to unfinished business, really. They say you should never go back. I do feel it was difficult for me when I first came back. I wasn't the prodigal son returning by any means. I thought the Arsenal fan then was more demanding. You come through the ranks and they'll forgive anything. But when you go away and come back, it's different. So it took a bit of time. I was playing in lots of different positions to give the guys a rest. There was 2 cup competitions to be won that year. So I'm not sure if I was really being taken seriously. But I think by the 96 season, I was player of the year for Arsenal. And then certainly under Wenger untapped the quality that I had, unravelled that coil that for whatever reason wasn't being unravelled before. You know, there were pockets of performances. To get in the England squad, of course, you need to play well, as I did at Everton. But I really started to enjoy my football under Arsene Wenger, and there was the fear, I think, of failure disappeared, and instead of the joy of trying to win something, became really every day of training with Wenger was a special time.
Yeah. I thought what was really interesting that the book really sort of shines a light on the dog-eat-dog world of football behind the scenes in terms of the competition. And like you said there, when you first came back in '93, you said Baldy basically came up to you and said, look, I'm not going to be your mate. You're coming here to replace me. And you say straight away, you're kind of on the back foot there. It's like, they don't really want me here. You know, I'm up against them. You talk about that in the youth days as well. And, you know, you and Tony were such a key relationship throughout all your career, but you're kind of competing against each other, or the club making you compete against.
Well, I was the outsider, wasn't I? So
yeah,
I was the country bumpkin, as I was told every time you come by. Where's your come by in Harvester? Every time it's interesting. I know people buying the book as well, but the audio will give you those chats, the real life chat between me and Tony. It's the actual recording. You can hear my grandson in the background to give it authenticity, and then the Wenger chat is our chat as well. So we had these conversations and we thought, well, okay, we might as well put them on the audio because it's more powerful. And I was listening to that just the other day. Arsene Wenger is a fantastic listen. He's head of FIFA. And we talk a little bit about, there's some revelations in the book from Arsene Wenger, which even shocked me. And we do some, we talk about some key points, things that were on my mind. Same with Tony, really. It's a very kind of, I found it liberating talking to Tony because we were kind of pitched together a little bit. You know, there's not too many young central defenders, is there, that go on to captain. Well, I captained my country, Tony did. And we had great success together. And he talks about me as a great player, which is like the first time I ever really heard that from him, which was somehow, makes me feel now that I've accomplished what I set out to achieve. Although I didn't need his approval, but somehow it helps when you do get it.
Yeah, I think that comes across in those two transcripts. Is almost for you, it really means a lot what both of them are saying to you in that transcript. And I thought that was a really excellent.
But we were carrying a flag, me and Tony, really for that youth team. To be like Rocky had passed at this stage. Like we are. At a certain age, hoping for more contracts and more years, and he's actually gone. He's lost his life. So all of those emotions. No Mickey Thomas. You could argue those two particularly were allowed to leave very early. Really could have stayed longer. Quinny had gone earlier. Merce stayed a good passage of play. Merce was there for a good long while. Mm-hmm. So we were kind of the last U team members still there, and that kind of that meant a lot to me to finally start winning trophies.
Yeah, as you can see on the screen, there's one of the trophies you're holding in your in the hands between you both. I mean, Arsene Wenger was obviously such a huge moment in both of your careers, really, when he arrived at the club, and especially for you. I mean, there's always that talk of how much he extended certain players' careers, like yourself, Lee, Nigel, Tony, even. Just talk to us a little bit about Arsene and just the way he completely sort of changed the game, but also maybe changed your game as well.
Well, all these years later, you're still learning from him. So we went to visit him at the FIFA headquarters, and he was talking about how the responsibility of a manager is to take away fear. Any feeling of worrying about making mistakes, take that away. And he still felt that he could have done more for me in that area. But really, it was that very thing, really, he took away, because he trusted in me and he believed in me. But I also think Wenger loved his players. That's a special quality. And the managers that believed in me, but challenged me, but always felt that they kind of they were in my corner, got the best from me. And certainly that's the case with Arsene Wenger. Every day was something to learn. Choose to win became the sort of mantra, in terms of how we took our food on board. Carry this with you. I've still got one now. Sip, body temp. It's got to be room temperature water. Live your life in a certain way. Simplicity. You take that then into your football. So all of these things were really being learned. We were learning from Arsene Wenger. He had other people coming in, nutritionists, like sports scientists, to break it down. So it's not one voice. It's not like your father in your ear telling you everything and maybe what you don't want to listen. So, and then of course I was feeling like Superman on the pitch. I don't know if it's the stretching, the supplements, the tablets that we're taking, iron, vitamins, zinc. They found I was anemic. They blood tested me. I used to get cramp late in games, and all that disappeared. So it was really professional. The food at the training ground, George would say, "I'm not cooking for you. Go home and make your own food." And then suddenly Arsene Wenger saying, "No. This is the most important meal of the week. I'm making sure you're going to eat X, Y, and Z." So the professionalism changed. The detail changed. So and it became the training was intense. We thought actually he didn't want to play a back five. He wanted to play a back four, and he was trying to lose one of us in the training sessions. Such was the sort of level of training, because was it going to be Boldy? Was it going to be Keown? Was it going to be Adams? Who was going to play? But he played all three of us. Mm-hmm. I thought that was clever, actually, at the beginning. He didn't make too many changes. He just did that in his second season. So this is a picture that I managed to get onto. That there's been a picture. One of the guys did a serialization of this, Oliver Holt, and he picked out the back four in 97, 98, which was a bit mischievous, because they played an amazing part as well, but I was in there somewhere. And poor David Seaman never gets talked about in this back four as well. We shouldn't dismiss David's contribution to the success. John Lukic as well can lay claim to that, but nonetheless, it was an outstanding back four that I had to try and break that down, didn't I? Andy Linegan had done that to a certain extent, and O'Leary, I suppose, had pockets of football. But it was great to be with that four, and they were, very demanding, very proud men, and it was kind of an over our dead body approach to defending.
Yeah, I mean, this was obviously the start of an amazing period to be an Arsenal fan. I was sat in my season ticket in the West Stand for all of it, and it was just an incredible time to be an Arsenal fan. Those 3 league titles between 98 and 2004, the FA Cups as well.
I think, Charles, overnight, I think people underestimate this. I looked at some newspaper articles around that time, studying, sort of, not relying totally on my memory. In that season, the bookies were paying out at Christmas on Manchester United. So, and I think we were 11 points behind at one stage. This season, people were like saying we're out of it now. It's not really. We certainly never gave up. But we went overnight, really, from boring Arsenal to ole, Arsene Wenger. The football was just ridiculous. And it was like overnight. And so for me, it's like messaging. And the thing was, like, I felt complete playing for Wenger. It was not, under George, it was like, no, do what you're good at. Win it, give it to someone who can play. Now, of course, essentially, we know that's true, but somehow it was killing any instinct to play the game in total, and you want to do that. The fan wants to do that from the sideline. And it was totally fulfilling playing under Wenger, and the success just followed. So there was never any restrictions created by Wenger. Anything was possible, even going unbeaten in the whole season.
Yeah, which is obviously a big part of the book as well. And just an amazing season, 2004. I think you sort of mentioned in the book, you're like, which was the best? 98, 2002, 2004 in terms of it. And it's a question that I've, myself, my friends, we've always kind of debated which was the best team. Each team has its own merits. Obviously, the Invincibles, when you go through a season unbeaten, it kind of puts you at the pedestal there because it's something no one's ever done before, certainly not in the modern era. But there is certainly an argument that the 2002 team, obviously incredible team after a bit of a shaky start, but once you got going, it was just an unbelievable season. The 98 team, fantastic. 99 team, there's quite a lot on 99 as well. United end up winning the treble that season, but things go a little bit differently, specifically Villa Park, for example, in the semi-final. I think Arsenal, if Bergkamp scores that penalty, I think Arsenal win the cup. I think they win the league, and it could have just been a completely different season as well. So it's very hard to pick what is the best team out of that era, really, from 98 onwards.
Well, it was a lot of the guys, a lot of the characters, if we can call them characters, were all involved in all of these films. From 97 right way through. Patrick Vieira was involved, wasn't he? A lot of that period. Lee Dixon, I suppose, was still there in 2002. I was still there in 2004. We'd lost Anelka and we lost Overmars. I think the key thing was that I think a lot of teams would have crumbled. When we lost to Liverpool in the Millennium Stadium, and then we lose to Galatasaray. These moments hurt, but it made it all the nicer when we eventually did win, when we eventually climbed another mountain at 202 to win at Old Trafford, which was for me a fantastic occasion. But, the team that starts in 97, 98 is a pioneer team for all the teams that follow. And that's why I think that there became an aura in the tunnel that as it followed, and I was there, so I lived through it. 99, a lot of the games were won in the tunnel. They'd look at us, look at the size of Vieira, he's even bigger in real life than I realised. We can't kick them. We can't outplay them. How are we going to beat them? I think in 99, we only conceded 17 goals and still don't become champions. So, we were winners, but we just weren't picking up the pots. And I think something I suggest in the book that something bigger was at fault. There was another force at work against Manchester United. When I see them win the Champions League that against Bayern Munich, I giggled because I thought, well, we've been on the receipt. There was 30 seconds to go, and they end up winning 2-1. So something strange, something maybe majorly strange happened, in that game or in that season. And credit to Manchester United, but a lot of their players feel that 99 group was probably the best group of Arsenal players that they played against. But it was the platform, certainly, wasn't it, to go unbeaten for the rest of the season in 2-3-0-4.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got to talk about the back cover of your book. Obviously, we called On the Edge. It's called On the Edge, obviously, and maybe that sort of sums up this picture, which is, you say in the top of this book, look, no regrets, obviously. And I think every single Arsenal fan in the world, if they would change this picture, and they would say absolutely not. It's one of the most iconic. It's alongside Henri celebrating in front of the Spurs fans and that sort of thing. It's such an iconic picture. You dedicate a whole chapter to this kind of incident and Ruud van Nistelrooy in the book, because it does go sort of hand in hand with you, as much as I suppose if you say, all the things you achieved in your career, you probably get asked about this picture as much as anything else. But it's there in black and white. You say no regrets whatsoever about this picture. It's kind of summed up that rivalry, doesn't it? All in one frame here. It just kind of summed up the rivalry between Arsenal and Man United, which had us all so enthralled for so many years.
Do you know, ironically, it's like Ruud van Nistelrooy just keeps turning up, doesn't he? Because I was about to do the launch, about to do a radio interview with TalkSport Radio, and we had to cancel it because Ruud van Nistelrooy was being appointed as the temporary manager of Manchester United. And I said, well, look, I was jumping up and down in front of him. Now he seems to be jumping up and down in front of my book launch. So, actually, I wish him well. It was nice to see a bit of emotion from a Manchester United manager, against Leicester. Someone that was actually celebrating instead of being sort of in a controlled manner. And there was a bit more electricity about the team. So, and I'd accused him actually of sitting there really not taking part in what was, their demise, because he looked like he was on the edge of it, but he certainly was involved last night. He scored plenty of goals. Only scored, I think, 9 goals all season. He scored 5 last night. So he keeps turning up. But, I was concerned at the time. I was a senior player dragging youngsters into something, back in the day. And I went to Wenger to apologise when all this settled down. And the boss was like, no, we're 100% behind you. We have to fight. Going to Old Trafford was never an easy experience. And, you're lucky to get a free kick there, never mind a penalty. I think in a 10-year period, which we go to those facts in the book, I think there were only 3 penalties awarded there in 10 years and only 1 scored at Old Trafford.
Yeah, so I still think that was never ever a penalty. Your challenge on Forlan in that game, there's never a penalty. Forlan just falls over, never a pen.
Well, that's not even an argument. Like we're not even allowed to present that as an argument. But as I say, they got things very. It seemed to be that it was a very intimidating place, certainly for the referees. It wasn't an intimidating place for us. Our team with World Cup winners that we had in our team. I always loved it when all the noise stopped. You can be earning X amount of money. You can be lauded with one of the best players of all time. But now it's just me and you, and it's about who's going to do best, not what someone else thinks of you. And that's the beauty of football. You can go out and do it. The work job I'm in now is how you're perceived. You get jobs based on your perception. Is he a good journalist? Is he a good pundit? But when you play and you get results, it's hard to take you out when you keep winning, isn't it? So a win at Old Trafford always meant success, really. That was going to bring maybe a league title, or at least we'd be in the running for one. Yeah,
I love that line in your conversation with Arsene, where on that Ruud incident, where he says, "The only thing I regret is that you didn't headbutt him."
Yeah, I think he was joking. But people don't know about the boss, Arsene Wenger, his sense of humour, because that is. Ability to be able to laugh at himself. There's a little bit in the book about Ray Parlour with the Inspector Clouseau, Ray playing the videos on the bus, and then the bomb, which is what the boss says at the game against Wimbledon at Selhurst Park when the game has to be abandoned, which actually was beneficial to us because we came back again for the replay with Patrick Vieira, Manu Petit back into our midfield, which was really important in those days. Those two were, incredible midfield player partnership.
I mean, you talk about partnerships. We just move on to what's sort of modern day Arsenal right now. And you talk about partnerships there, and there's obviously a great sense about yourself. I'd just love to get your thoughts on Gabriel and Saliba. I think it was the transcript in the book with Tony when he was talking, or it might be Arsene. No, it was Arsene. And you were sort of comparing. I think he was comparing you and Tony and Baldy, and he was saying that you had the pace that they didn't, and that made such a great partnership. And he mentioned Saliba specifically in that conversation. And when you look at them and how their attributes suit each other, it's a fantastic centre-back partnership, isn't it, for Arsenal, that basically at the moment the team is built on.
It's interesting because I managed to get to meet them both great lads. At the end of last season, they were training at the stadium, and I was introduced to them. And I said to Saliba, if you don't mind, I just want to say some really nice things about Gabriel, because we know that you're a Rolls Royce and everyone loves you. But I see a little bit of Gabriel as the player that I might have been, the one that maybe didn't always get maybe all the credit or was even as well recognised. But Gabriel's changed that now. He scored 16 goals from set pieces. I think he sees that as a way of putting himself on the map. The beginning of last season, the manager didn't start him, but now he's one of the first names on the team sheet. So I think it's credit to him that he stood up within, because you can have competition in the partnerships. I think that's healthy, but there has to be a togetherness, and there's definitely a togetherness with these two to complement each other beautifully. I think Gabriel is equally as accomplished. Saliba, of course, maybe slightly calmer in possession, but Gabriel's a really good one-on-one defender, probably the best one-on-one defender at the club. So, and every success we've had over the years has come from a good partnership there. You get it right at centre half, and that usually follows with success. So I hope these two have got a massive future. They're starting out really, and I hope they're together now for another 10 years.
Yes, I think we all do. Absolutely. There's already talk and feels inevitable that there's going to be stories involving Real Madrid and Saliba, kind of similar to back when you were playing every summer. It was Vieira Madrid, wasn't it? We all had to kind of endure those summers every single summer thinking, oh, please stay. And he did stay. And for Arsenal as well, right now, keeping these two together and trying to keep
Saka,
them out.
I thought Saka
absolutely.
the other night, I thought he was immense. Just give him a few days off. He came back against Liverpool. I mean, Robertson's a good fullback. He made him look very ordinary.
He did, yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a team full of special talents at the moment, and they have been building together, haven't they? And we kind of feel like we're at that stage now where it is time to get over the line. It's easier said than done, of course. You're going up against an unbelievable team in Manchester City, and Liverpool are showing this season that they still mean business as well. So it's easier said than done, but it kind of feels like we're at that stage in the development of the team where trophies now and just getting your hands on some silverware is just so vitally important.
Well, we're in the fight, aren't we? I thought we lacked fight for a lot of years, but not now. It's about, again, we're in that area of keeping a lid on it, where we often went below the line. And I think in 2002, we had 6 players sent off and still went on to win the cup double. In fact, we had 2 players sent off in the FA Cup, so 8 in total. So, although it's not ideal, but we were winning those games. And it seems now the modern game, when you go down to 10 men, it does make a massive difference. So we've got to keep everybody on the pitch. You just need to get the balance right. That's all. But I'd sooner have fighters than people that don't really care and not bothered about the club. I sense there's a really good winning mentality amongst the group. They just got to turn that into a trophy. Yeah.
And maybe that's something Arsenal have lacked, haven't they? But it kind of, I mean, you talked about your role in the media now, which you're obviously really, really enjoying. But it's quite interesting now. The kind of narrative seems to be spinning against Arsenal this season of either using injuries as an excuse or things like that. We're hearing before games even have kicked off, whereas you kind of look at what Mikel's been saying. He's never once used injuries or suspensions as an excuse this season, but it's almost being spun like that is being used. I mean, there's obviously in the modern day and with media pundits and high pro pundits, fans feel like their club is being attacked. Do you, as with that deep-rooted connection you have to Arsenal, obviously you need to be neutral and say what you think, but do you always have that? Do you also have that feeling of I need to defend my club here against some of what's being said?
Well, the thing is, the way that they're playing and the way that they're performing, of course, I think they deserve to be protected. I look at the facts. So if we lose a game away from home for the first time since the end of December last year, then I don't see that as a crisis. I don't see that as a lack of mentality. I see that as an injury and fitness issue. That's why because we've had an awful lot of injuries. We've had an awful lot of players sent off. So there's a disciplinary issue that we need to overcome. And if I feel very strongly about the team, and I do feel that people try and spin the expected narrative. So they expect the manager to complain about the VAR and the officials' decisions. But when he doesn't, they still champion that argument anyway.
Yeah.
And I don't think this year we haven't really, if you think about it, the manager hasn't, they've kind of drawn a line under all these complaining. There's not been any complaints about injuries. There's not been any complaints about playing against Man City on a Sunday when they were in Europe on a Thursday against Atalanta. That might have been an area to complain about. You might have heard other clubs do that. They have not complained about anything. They're taking it all on the chin. But still, people want to come after Arsenal. But look, you just got to use that as energy and just and me particularly, I have a lot of fun with Simon Jordan and tries to wind me up, but I know where I am and what side I'm on. And if Arsenal weren't playing well, then I would be the first to say so.
Yeah.
This is a difficult period for Arsenal. Now, another away game at Newcastle, I can complain and say, how is it that we've gone to Spurs, Man City, Villa Park, and now Newcastle? We're all in the first number of away games, but we lost at Bournemouth. And that was Arsenal's own fault. That's the only place I can see where they slipped up. But that for me is down to the countless injuries that we've been getting. So that hopefully that starts to change.
Yeah. I mean, are you loving this new stage of your career, the punditry, the media work? You saw obviously your work on Talk Sport. Is it something you're really, really relishing now?
Yeah, but I'd rather put my energy into the club. But obviously, as a former player, we have to it's not like I talk about this in the book when I'm saying, if it was a village club that I, attended and played for, I could go back whenever I wanted and sit, in the clubhouse and look out and watch. But obviously, it's, this club is our very public company almost. And it's like, you can't just walk through the door. You can't say, you have to be responsible in the media. Of course, you want to help in every way you can. And get the message through the media. So if that's to be my role, then that's how I see it. But you would, in another journey, and we talk about this with Arsene Wenger, where he has some regret for not, using me as an assistant. You feel that you could have offered more and given a bit more back. And certainly regarding, if it is that everything about Arsenal runs through my veins, you would like to have handed more of that on to the next generation. But I think it's being done now. I think it's been done now where they're due. I think it's done with Arteta. These are really good people. Essentially, I was lucky to have worked with not great players, but some fantastic people. And that's equally as important. The two have to go hand in hand if you want to win anything. And that's really a good basis now going forward for the football club. Yeah,
you talk about that moving into coaching. I mean, that was a really enlightening sort of conversation with Arsene in the book. We haven't really heard Arsene talk about that before, because it is a criticism of him really that he didn't get some of the great football minds that you guys had in that team involved in the coaching setup like yourself. I think you did you do a bit there with on the run to the Champions League final in 2006 working with the defence, or that's certainly the kind
I did a whole year. I did, Charles. I did a whole year.
You did a whole year.
I did a whole year there, and we didn't. But look, Pat Rice was obviously very instrumental there. And we talk a little bit about how difficult that was for Pat to accept support and extra people around that. And we talk a bit about the ambience and me not wanting to affect that ambience with Pat and his staff, Wenger and his staff. So, but we worked together with the defence and never conceded a goal until the final.
Yeah,
we had Matthew Flamini, who needed to be encouraged, cajoled to play at left back, didn't want to play there, and the boss had tried. But I was able to, having worked with the boss, because the boss is like sets you a challenge, if you want to play in the position you want to play in, which is central midfield eventually, just do this job for me at left back. And I was able to explain that to Matthew. He came in at left back and did a fantastic job until we brought Ashley Cole back for the final. But as you say, we in that final itself, we conceded really early on, and we were down to 10 men, so. And if we'd have won that Champions League final, then things might have been different. But my parents wanted me to. My mother had Alzheimer's; she's still alive. My father's passed, and he was asking me to stop at home and not to, never mind Arsene Wenger, I need you. Yeah. So it made it very difficult for me to pull away, and I needed to explain this to the boss really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, like I said, everyone who's watching and listening to this, you can read about all of that and more in the book. Martin Keown on the Edge, which is out now. Martin, it's been an absolute pleasure joining you today. Thank you very much for giving me your time on what's a really, really busy day, and good luck with the book. I'm sure it's going to do really, really well.
Thank you, Charles. Pleasure to speak to you. Good luck for the rest of the season.
Yeah, you too. Enjoy the next week. A big one coming up. Newcastle, Inter, and Chelsea. Doesn't get much bigger than that, but
I'm on my way there tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, enjoy the game. Hopefully, a better result than last season.
Yeah, thanks, exactly. Martin. Some better decisions. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Thanks, Martin. You. It's been a pleasure. Bye-bye.